only Christ can create something. The only thing the enemy can do is pervert it. So there's no art form, there is no pure form of expression that does not belong to the Lord first.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to Framework Leadership, where we talk with leaders from across the globe. We get to explore their leadership techniques and, of course, all the great strategies for guiding their organizations to achieve success. I'm your host, Ken Engel, president of Southeastern University.
And I'm your co-host, Michael Steiner, Senior Vice President for Advancement and Innovation.
And man, we are excited to introduce our guest for today's show, Nate Diaz. Nate is already a Grammy and Dove Award-winning songwriter and has worked with Maverick City Music, House Fires, Elevation Rhythm. But what really stands out about Nate is his heart for ministry and really leading authentically in ways that, man, just connect to people with the message of what Christ is all about. And you're that way both on and off the stage, which is great. And we're excited that you're here. You're here for our Go conference at Southeastern University. But thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, it's a privilege. So we know you've worked with several, worship groups along with releasing your own music. And walk us through your journey working with like Elevation and Rhythm and Maverick City, and also working on your personal music career. How did it all happen? What was the dream? How did you just sense this is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot, but I'll give you the synopsis. I believe that everything that is of value, of substance, should happen organically,
right?
Or else you're gonna have to strive to keep it, alive. And so all of it kind of, when I literally tell you the Lord was just kind in the sense that one thing kind of led to another, right? In 2020, which was like a big year for everybody, right? COVID, everyone is just, it felt like free agent season. You can go anywhere, do anything, because why not? And so the Lord had it that I would just meet some people over at Maverick City, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't want to think anything of it because, quite frankly, it scared me, the idea of that much while being a second-year college student at Liberty University at the time. But, man, one thing led to another. I ended up at a camp in Atlanta, and I went from this Puerto Rican kid in Delaware who didn't know how to wear his in-ears correctly to we're writing songs with Mav, and, through that, I met everyone at Elevation. I ended up finding a home church in Charlotte post my time at Liberty, and it literally just kept falling into place. And I think that it's been such a blessing to be able to function in different rooms while still keeping the authenticity of oneself and serving something else. I think that's why it's sustainable, is that I'm always serving unto something.
Right.
None of it is self-serving.
Good. Yeah.
So walk us through the moment where you realized, man, I think this is more than just something I'm doing, as part of my dorm room, but this is something that I actually feel called to. How did that happen?
Yeah, I think I can trace it back to the day. I always knew that there was a call to lead God's people in worship on my life. I didn't know that it would be full-time ministry because where I'm from, it's everybody who does ministry is bivocational. Churches don't get big enough for people to have salaries and full-time ministry. There's no reference point for what that looks like. So in December of 2020, this is after I did my first event with Mav. Like I said, I wasn't tied to anything. I was just like, this is a great experience. I'm thankful. I'm grateful. But the Lord woke me up out of my sleep and was just like, took me to Job and was like, if I took everything from you, would I still be enough?
Yeah. Wow.
And I realized as a 20-year-old man, I had gotten super comfortable with my situation at Liberty, super comfortable with everything, all good things, but I started to lose my first love just because everything else for the first time in my life was really working out, and I got really comfortable in it. And I think it was in that moment that I was like, I am called to love him. And then a byproduct of that is loving him through music.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I remember that was the day that I was like, this will be the thing that my life revolves around. Christ will be the thing that my life revolves around. And calling-wise, like your question is to music, I was just like, I'm starting to do this music thing more than I am my classes.
Yeah.
And so I have a feeling this is where it's going to end up.
Sure.
I love it.
Yeah. I love how you talk about your journey. We're all about here at SCU, Divine Design, always discovering and developing that divine plan that God has for us, the journey. And I know as you look back over what you've gone through and how you've kind of discerned your calling through that journey. You realize God just orchestrates all of that. What kind of advice would you give those who are trying to really discern what direction God has, whether a new opportunity is a door opened by God and it's something that, man, they should step right into and pursue?
Yeah, I think a good indicator for where the Lord is peace. Peace, and then also I would say that you can't ignore being processed by the Lord so that he can lead you to a place of peace. Even in general, if it's spiritually, financially, just overall, I feel like if you negate the process of life, the friction of life, having to feel things that are uncomfortable, having to make sense of things that might not make sense in the moment, I feel like that's my biggest piece of advice is don't negate process. Allow yourself to be processed. Allow yourself to be tried, your beliefs, your faith, your hope to be tried and tested. And then when those things have been tested, go where the peace of God is.
Yeah, I love it. And one of the things you keep talking about is that authenticity with all of this. Allowing yourself to be tried, serving. Those are some of the things you've talked about. I feel like as worship leaders, especially, but really any kind of ministry leader, this is something that I think we've talked a lot about some struggle with, right? Like how do you maintain that authenticity? So tell us a little bit about how you think about that.
Man, that is so huge. It's one of the things I'm most passionate about. I think maintaining authenticity, if I could give it like in layman's terms, is allowing myself to feel everything that I'm feeling and then ask God what to do with these feelings.
Yeah.
Not ignoring the reality of sometimes you're going to be upset, frustrated, envious, jealous, even things that you have to allow the Lord, you have to surrender to the Lord and surrender to community around you.
Wow.
I think that the biggest part of being authentic is being honest about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
So what does that look like, sharing it with your community?
Man, I got people that I will snitch on myself with.
Okay.
All right. You can ask my friends that you will never have to, because I also know what it's like to not be honest.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to lie about where I'm at. I know what it's like, even from a ministry standpoint, to sing about God as a stranger to him.
Wow.
As a young man, I know what that's like to navigate that. And so the people in my life know that if I'm not doing well, I will call you.
Wow.
Because living with a clean conscience is what we were made for. And so I don't hide. I remember I used to hide as a teenager. I used to hide in addiction. I used to hide in so many things, in shame and guilt, until I realized the power of being honest and how much freedom there is on that. I will call my friends and be like, I'm feeling this, da-da-da-da-da. Can you pray for me? Can you lift me up? And I actually have found so much strength in that.
Wow.
Yeah, and the more you, and as you mentioned, the more you hide, actually, the more miserable you become in life.
Yep.
And when you're connected, that's why we love Ephesians 2:10. You're a masterpiece, but the key to that is in Christ. So connected to Christ allows you to have that peace and that freedom and that, wow, I'm doing what it is God has. I know you have a great love for your roots, a passion for Latin America and Latin culture. Puerto Rican background. How can people from diverse backgrounds, especially those with Hispanic roots like yourself, bring their unique culture and sound to a broader worship community?
Man, I love this. I'm going to take a little journey here, but I promise you I'm going to get somewhere. I know what it's like to be a second generation Latino here in the States who is very much, some people would say I'm too Americanized for the Latino church, but then when I get to the American church, they're like, you're super Latino. So there's an entire community in this identity crisis where we're too Latino for this, but we're too American for this. And so I found myself, in my situation, the way that I have been able to express worship is not denying either and not belonging to one or the other. And it comes back to the authenticity thing. Is it like I will sing Spanish and I will go back to my roots and my hymns are in Spanish, the Psalms that I memorize are in Spanish, but the latter part of my life is in English, but I will mix the two. I will not act like one is less than the other, because I think God views them both as holy and both as useful and both as his image.
Right.
I think you actually learn how to respect it when you realize you're actually made in his image. Like,
Wow.
this place in the middle was created by him for him as well.
Right.
And how's that been received as you've been cultivating creative, bringing that flavor? How's that been received?
It's really new, and I've been seeing it really light up joy in other people's eyes, because they feel permission to maybe not be someone with perfect Spanish,
Right.
or I'm from the island, or I'm from this country and then moved here, and it's given them permission to be themselves too.
Wow. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
You've really been expanding and kind of pushing the boundaries of worship music. You released a solo music that really extends the way that worship sounds. How do you make sure, in a disciplined way, Christ is always at the center while exploring those creative avenues, creative turns, and so forth?
I have this holy fear of the Lord that has led me to realize there is no creation outside of Christ.
Ah, good. Yeah.
Only Christ can create something. The only thing the enemy can do is pervert it. So there's no art form, there is no pure form of expression that does not belong to the Lord first.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we were ever meant to get good at art outside of him.
Yeah.
So when I write songs, I write from the Bible. When I even expression, like, I allow myself to feel things, like I said, but my filter is Christ. What does Christ say about what I'm feeling?
Yeah.
And then that's what goes on the paper, the truth.
Yeah.
And so if Christ is always the center of my creativity, then I don't have to worry about creating something outside of him.
Yeah.
That's great.
Because he's the creator.
Right.
He paints the sky every night, whether I look at it or not.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
it's always
he's-
new. So how do you add in but the different flavors? I think part of your music that we've seen is it's really pushing the bounds of what is worship music, what does it sound like? Part of it is your roots. Tell us about that process of merging the two.
Yeah, I think that Christ is also someone super fun. So I love to have fun when I'm creating.
Yeah, there you go.
I love to have fun. And in turn, that has pushed a lot of boundaries. I mean, I've done some crazy stuff.
Right.
But I feel the grace of God on it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do it if I didn't feel like I wasn't functioning under grace. Right? I feel like that's how I do it, is by having fun with my friends. I want to keep everything as simple as possible.
Yep.
And so I'm like, let's just have fun. Let's all get in a room, talk about them, sing about them, and whatever happens, happens. It doesn't have to be a 4-chord pad with a piano to it. It could be this massive house song that I also cried writing to. You know?
Right. And God can work through that kind of music.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's, but there's been a lot of discussion back and forth. Is like, can you write worship songs with a hard beat, or all that kind of stuff? But it's like, God can talk through those kind of things.
I used to be opposed to it.
Yeah. Okay.
I used to actually be on the other side of it.
What happened? What changed?
God humbled me. Okay. God humbled me he convicted me that I had lost my childlikeness.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good.
And you have to be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I was just like, knowing this, I was like, the Lord creates, he's the best creator. And he was like, then why don't you think that someone can't meet me through this? Is it because that you haven't? Yeah. If so, then you have limited me to your experience. Yep. And I'm so much bigger than your experience. Yep. And I actually desire to bring new wine into the earth. And you can be a part of it or not. And I was just like, whoa. Like, even if it looks foolish. And you know what? If it's for Christ, then I will look foolish. I will put a crazy beat behind this. Yep. Because he says I can. Yeah. And what he says goes.
Exactly. I love that. I know writing is oftentimes a team process. You're working with others together. But it's also a process of casting vision of what you feel God is leading you all to create. When you're working on new music, working on a new song, how do you keep a team aligned in that process? And what can writers and musicians learn from that process about innovation?
Man, the writing room is such a special space to me, and I love the dynamic of it, because I think the best way to make sure that a team stays aligned is to realize in the room, serving the people in the room matters more than trying to get a good song.
Yep.
And when you function with this, like that mind and spirit of synergy, good things come out of it.
Right.
Because you're actually worried about the humanity of the person in front of you.
Right.
You're not bypassing their humanity or bypassing their feelings for the sake of getting a product. The product is not the end goal in the writing room. Communion is. And most times I've walked into a room, I've ended up loving the people so much that we write a good song. Because you can't create something innovative with strangers or people that you don't trust.
Yep.
You know?
I love it. And you know what you guys have done with Elevation, with Maverick City. I remember when it first came out in 2020, a co-branded CD, two worship teams. Obviously, it wasn't necessarily the first time that ever happened, but it was the first time it ever like hit at that level. Two worship teams working together on an album, and that's been something I think it's a hallmark of your guys' ministry and what you're doing. Is that where you think the future of worship is going? What's going to happen next for worship?
Oh, yeah. I think the future of worship is getting back to simplicity, which is, and we felt the growing pains of that with movements like Maverick City, with the old church basement. Even that entire thought process is take me back to where I started. I think that the Western church is in the place that the Church of Ephesus was, is that we have incredible deeds. We feed the poor. We do missions. We do all the right things. But the flame of our first love has died out. And it's scary because the Church of Ephesus is the first church in history to actually die.
Right. You're right. Yeah.
And they were the best on paper. They were the best to their sight. They had the best leaders even. People like Timothy were a part of. Mary, the mother of Jesus, was a part of the Church of Ephesus. So it's like, I think that's where worship music is going. In an age where everything is ever expanding, could it be that the kingdom of God is calling us to simplicity?
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, as we wrap up our conversation, again, thank you for sitting down and having this conversation with us. But looking back at your journey so far, you think about all the people you've met, the steps that you've had to go through, the difficult experiences, all the collaborations, the projects, the spiritual process behind the scenes. What kind of advice would you, just that simple advice you'd give to anyone who's really wanting to go after their calling, whether that's in worship, that's in other kinds of ministry leadership, or whatever that calling may be? How do they go after that in a way that's, man, they can sense fulfillment?
Yeah, I think the best way to go after your calling is to actually lay down that dream of you being something and allow the Lord to form within you a heart that desires to be someone after him. He is the prize. The calling is a byproduct.
Sure.
But our greatest calling is unto him, to love him, to be devoted, we were made for his delight and to delight in him. And then from that springs forth so many wells of, you know what, I think I want to do this in worship. I think I have a calling to teach on my life. I've spent so much time with my beloved, and he told me that he wants me to pastor, you know, and because then it's birthed from a pure place and can be sustained for a long time. I think the best way to get into your calling is to know him so well that you don't even have to ask, like he tells you.
Yeah.
You know?
That's so good. Wow. Incredible. Man, a privilege to have you with us today and being a part of our conference. You're going to be doing some great ministry with us, so we're excited about it. And you know, you are a very transparent, genuine, humble individual who it's evident that's why God has been able to, as you just shared with us, lead you in a way that has influence because you are, man, acquiescing to just your relationship with him and then going through what God has for you in a special way. So that's evident, and that's what touches lives, and we're grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been so cool.
Love it. Love it. And if you want to stay up to date with Nate, you can follow him on Instagram at NateE.Diaz. Make sure to check out his latest album, Chroma, wherever you get your music, and check him out on his album, check him out on Elevation Rhythm, and wherever you get your music. Thank you so much for listening to Framework Leadership.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Framework Leadership. If you're watching on YouTube, now would be a great time to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you can get incredible leadership content right to your YouTube feed. You can also check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts every single week, Framework Leadership. And if you love great email newsletters, and I know I do, make sure you check out keningle.com and subscribe to the Framework Leadership newsletter. It's an incredible piece of content we put out every single week of amazing leadership resources right to your inbox. Make sure you check it out. You can also follow us on Instagram at Kent_Ingle, at Dr. Michael Steiner, on X at Kent Ingle, and on Facebook at Kent.Ingle. Stay up to date on all the incredible things happening on the podcast and at Southeastern University. We love you guys, and we love our followers and our subscribers. Thank you so much for listening to the Framework Leadership Podcast.